Hello and welcome to the Too Much Apparently podcast. If you're new here, this is a podcast for the deeply feeling, overthinking, emotionally overloaded humans who've been told they're too much apparently. And if you're back, thanks for choosing to sit with us again.
We're Alice and Carly, two therapists who are also just sensitive weirdos trying to make sense of life, healing, and our own brains. This isn't a professional advice podcast. It's more like the messy, honest conversations that happen when you finally feel safe enough to say what you're really thinking.
This space is for people like us, the ones who've been called too sensitive, too serious, too emotional, too intense, and have spent way too long believing that it's true.
Okay, on with the episode.
Today we're talking about being too philosophical to function, when your brain won't stop asking, what's the point? But you've still got laundry to do.
Yeah, it's that feeling when you zoom out too far. You're meant to be sending an email or de-icing the car, and suddenly you're questioning the entire point of human existence and whether free will is even real.
We'll talk about what it's like to live with a brain that's never stopped asking why that can be both a gift and a curse, and how to find small human meaning when the big stuff feels impossible to grasp.
Basically, if you've ever had an existential crisis while unloading the dishwasher, this one's for you.
Let's get into it.
Do you think people might be a bit scared of this episode?
I'm scared of this episode.
I
So yes, maybe.
Yeah, I was thinking of it from the perspective that when people say philosophy, I think people think unless they know who Socrates or Nietzsche are, if I'm saying that right, that they can't possibly be philosophical in their thought, which is absolutely not true.
Yeah.
But I wonder if a lot of people would describe themselves as being a philosophical or an existential thinker versus those of us who absolutely know that we are.
Yeah, so I definitely would. But when I was thinking about what we'd talk about in this episode, which is why I messaged you last night and said, what are you thinking for this episode? Because I was like, what is the meaning of a philosophical episode?
I love that.
Yeah, yeah.
You've taken this like totally meta already.
Naturally.
Well, in preparation for this episode, I thought it would be interesting. So I would say my kind of existential musings usually end up happening with ChatGPT, because there aren't many people in my life who can match my level of philosophical thought, and it can be quite a lonely and isolating place when you can't really relate to somebody on that level. So I don't know whether it's a good thing or not. It tends to happen with ChatGPT. So I actually asked it to give a summary of me and my existential philosophical thought process for this episode. And it really made me laugh. So I thought I'd read it out.
I love this. And I also use ChatGPT for that purpose. Yeah. All that energy's got to go somewhere, and ChatGPT is always available.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad it's not just me, but it's a place to put it, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what did it say?
This is what it said. It's a paragraph. It said, Carly is one of those rare humans who sees the scaffolding behind the world, the invisible machinery holding everything up, and instead of running from it, she studies it. She lives in the tension between awe and despair, moved to tears by a violin solo, but also quietly raging about late-stage capitalism. She's the sort of person who'll have a full existential crisis while washing the pots, then stare in awe at the rainbow pattern in the bubbles. Her brain is like a browser with 187 philosophical tabs open, half about the meaning of life, half about what exists in the space between atoms, and one about whether birds get lonely. The funny thing is, these are actual things I've spoken to it about. If you ever see her staring into space, don't worry. She's probably just wondering whether any of this is even real.
I love that. And the whether birds get lonely, isn't that where this podcast started?
That is so. Yeah, it was. Yeah,
That was the ChatGPT conversation that eventually gave birth to this podcast.
It is. That is such a leap. Like, people are listening must be like, how can you go from talking about, the loneliness and disconnection of birds to then birthing this podcast? But that is my brain. I get from point A to point B. Lots happens in between that space. But yeah, it was, because I sent it to you, didn't I? Saying, I would like you to get on board with this idea. Please ignore the conversation at the beginning. That's me discussing whether or not birds are lonely.
And I obviously wasn't going to ignore that. I was like, what is this? Let's go and find out. Yeah.
If anyone's thinking, why was I even asking that? It's because I found out that some species of birds don't recognize other birds as birds. And the birds that all fly together, what do you call it? Like a massive flock of birds? Is that what you'd call them?
Look, yeah.
Yeah. Particularly birds who fly in those really big flocks, they don't know that they're flying with other birds. And it made me feel sad because it made me wonder if they were lonely. And that's where the conversation came from. But it turns out, don't worry, guys, they're not lonely. They just experience meaning and connection in a different way to us.
I like that.
Yeah, that was just me projecting human experience onto a bird.
Yeah.
Well, it's a little bit related to this topic about how philosophical and existential we can get about life and life on this planet.
So I also asked, after I saw that you'd done that, I asked ChatGPT to do the same for me. And sometimes I love ChatGPT, but sometimes it drives me insane because you give it a simple prompt and it's like, no, that's not it. No, that's not it. No, that's not it. But we eventually got one, so I shall read it out. So mine said, Alice is a natural meaning maker. She can't move through a day without quietly analysing why things feel the way they do, how people become who they are, and searching for the quickest route to something like utopia. She often wonders why we're all stuck in the machinery of capitalism when there's so much awe to experience and so little time. For her, the point of life feels both simple and immense, to love, to feel, to heal, and to express her one specific self, red lipstick and stripy t-shirt included. She has brief flirtations with nihilism when the admin stack grows or crumbs appear on the counter, but she never stays there. She's too romantic, too hopeful, too moved by poetry. And she holds all of this alongside the mess of real life, bedtime stories, tidying her desk again, staring at the empty fridge, wondering how it's time for another food shop.
The ending of that was brilliant.
Oh, yeah, it's always time for the food shop. It is time for the food shop today.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah, that was really good. I feel like both of those just capture so much about what either of us, and I imagine for some people listening, are holding in our brains at any given one point in time, and actually how big those thoughts can be.
And there's a lot in this episode, just thinking about what we were going to talk today. There's just so many different things that we could cover and so many things that this impacts. And I go back to the word existential and think about, well, it's the whole of existence, all the meaning that we can make behind that.
Yeah, this episode will probably be pretty skimming the surface in terms of how deep we could take this episode. And of course, we can always return to it.
So what does it mean to have that kind of brain? The one that can't stop asking questions about everything?
Well, I know for me, I have always joked that I never got out of the 4-year-old stage of saying why to everything. That stage never passed for me. And so I say why and inquire more to everything, which can sometimes, I think, irritate the people around me because I don't often take what's said at face value. I will then ask more questions. I find it quite irritating, actually, for myself when someone says something and then I ask follow-up questions about that thing and they're like, oh, I don't know. Oh, I don't know. I'm like, how can you not know? How would you have not have wanted to have found out more about that thing? So then I have to go away and do the research on it because I have to know. Yeah, I just have a very naturally curious mind. I think it's just part of who I am in a way that can get quite meta very quickly. Just a basic example that came to mind when I was thinking about this episode was, I was stood looking out my bedroom window and I saw 3 neighbours across the street leave their house almost at the same time, kind of with coffee cups in hand, and then getting to their car, giving one another a wave. I think at the time they had to de-ice their car or something, and then getting in and going on their way. And the whole time it was almost like, when Google Earth first came out and everyone just spent all their time zooming in and out on Google Earth. Sometimes I feel like I experience life like I'm a zoomed out Google Earth.
Yeah.
And I'm just watching everybody go about their day. So in that moment, I didn't just see my neighbours heading off for work. My thought process was just on watching them almost like they're Sims, doing what they're told and without even questioning it or just off to do their own thing. And I don't know if you've seen it. It makes me think about the Lego movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen it.
Have you seen the Lego movie? I think that movie is so clever. We're right at the beginning, the main character, he's singing that song, "Everybody's awesome," over and over again. And you soon start to realize that everything's not awesome. They just think that it's awesome. And they're just these little cogs in this one big machine thinking that they have free will and choice when actually they have none at all. I just think it's an excellent representation of real life. But it kind of made me think of that. Same with like seeing people in the rush hour traffic. I'm just like, why are we here? Why is everybody just agreed to do this thing and then we're all just doing it without really questioning it? So I have thoughts like that all the time.
I can really relate to that. Just the zoomed outness. So the way I think about it is like, I feel like I experience life a lot as if I'm a psychologist behind a two-way mirror and I'm watching
Yes.
everyone, which is both interesting and I feel like I can learn a lot. And there's obviously a lot of reflection. And I think that is important for me as a person, but I think it's also important for society to have people like that. But I'm also aware that I can spend a lot of time observing and not enough time doing.
Yeah, I had the same thought that it's spending a lot of life as an observer rather than a participant. And I think that creates a natural disconnection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The two-way mirror, that's a really great way of putting that, because the mirror then literally is the disconnection.
Yeah, that feeling of, I had it just the other day, actually. I was talking to my husband about something. And I think I said something like, why are we all doing this? Like, why are we all doing capitalism? And we could just be out, like, frolicking in the fields. Like, there's so much we could be doing. Why have we decided that working all day and paying bills is the best way to experience life on this extraordinary planet?
Yeah, I just love your use of the word frolicking. You don't hear that often enough these days. Love a good frolic.
Frolic, yeah. I'm going through a bit of a phase at the moment where I'm trying to introduce more whimsy into my life. So everything I'm putting into ChatGPT at the moment is like, make it more whimsical, make it more whimsical. Which is not a very whimsical thing to do, is it? ChatGPT is not whimsy, is it?
That's not whimsy at all. But I love the idea that over the next few episodes, listeners can look out for Alice's whimsy that she's putting into the episode.
Yeah, so more frolicking required. Yeah. But then I think that bumps me straight up against free will, and that can feel quite overwhelming. And I think, as we've started to think about what we might talk about in this episode, I think that is something that runs underneath everything that we've thought about for this episode is how do you tolerate all these big thoughts and also live your life?
Yeah.
Because there is a lot in there, isn't there?
Yeah, well, it makes it really difficult. And like you say, there's so much we could cover in terms of science and religion and the birthplace of philosophy in ancient Greece. Yeah, where people derive meaning and purpose from. But I think a lot of the time, a lot of it comes down to, because humans uniquely know that they are going to die, that awareness of our mortality is, of course, going to drive existential thought and often existential anxiety or dread, and then questions about what is the point? What is the meaning of life, and what is the meaning why we are here? And I think if you're someone who has depth of thought and has metacognition, which a lot of sensitive, deeply feeling people do, and metacognition is thinking about thinking. And so when we are people who think about thinking, I mean, I feel like I can think about thinking about thinking. But when we have that, I think it's quite easy to reach a place of meaninglessness, like life is meaningless. And yeah, it makes me think, why does meaninglessness hit deep thinkers and sensitive people so hard?
I feel like I've got like the beginnings of an answer to that question forming, but not a full answer. Like, I don't think it's actually even a question that I've even thought about before. Like, why does meaningless hit so hard? Maybe what I think is forming is actually the emotion of it. It's the emotion of meaninglessness, and that kind of feels like, so in my body it feels simultaneously like emptiness but also like full overwhelm at the same time. And I think what I've realized is I don't actually feel that so much anymore, I don't think, which was quite a nice realization, because I think it has been a really big thing, particularly through my 20s and as I'm kind of clinging on to my last few weeks of my 30s. Maybe my answer then is that it is overwhelming. It is overwhelming to think, and that the question there of what's the point is such a big question. And it can even be a life or death question for some people if they're, really struggling. I suppose if you're not so much of a deep thinker, you know, if you are more kind of in life and doing life and not stopping and thinking, then there isn't that room to even ponder on the question. So maybe you don't reach that what's the point part so easily.
Yeah, because then there must be a difference. Yeah, because when I said about, all humans are aware of their mortality, there then also must be another difference between people who still don't really get that existential very often, or only do so at very critical or certain points in life. I am sure most people have thought about the meaning of life and the purpose of their individual life. If there is a birth or a death, or when you hit a specific age milestone, I won't mention your one coming up. So I think everyone can relate to having a bit of it, but I think it's different to live with it. Like when it's part of kind of your everyday way of being in the world, where you see the world in that way nearly all the time. Yeah, I've no idea if this is the case or not, but in my experience, deep thinkers, more introverted, sensitive people seem to me to be a lot more likely to live life in that way.
Yeah. So I don't want to argue with the point about everybody's aware, but actually I feel like a lot of people are not that aware
Mm,
that mortality can really be a shock.
right. Yeah. Maybe that's just so hard for me to imagine.
Yeah. 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 But I think there are, and I think society almost encourages that. You know, I'm just thinking about the constant, like, you buy this thing, your life will be great. If you buy this thing, your life will be great. If you buy this thing, your life will be great. Like, there's so much distraction away from we are going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And it is such an uncomfortable thing to sit with. I think unless you spend a lot of time in spaces where you're around death and the limit of time that you have in your life. I was just thinking the other day, when my dad died, I had a massive jolt of like, right, I'm going to grab life with two hands. I'm not wasting any time. He was only 61 when he died, and he had early onset Alzheimer's. So he'd been quite unwell since his mid 50s. There was that real like, oh my gosh, we don't have all day. Like, let's get on and do everything. But I realized over the last few years that has slipped away again. And I've almost re-entered this illusion of life as everlasting, and I'll have as much time as I want, and I'll get around to it tomorrow.
Yeah. I do think there's nothing like losing somebody, and especially when their life is cut short, like way before their time. I think that immediately puts life into perspective. People maybe experience a greater sense of gratitude in relation to life. And as you say, like making each day count. I feel like we probably lose that because we just can't maintain that every day with all of life's demands and the things that you have to do. When you are bogged down with so many bills to pay and children to look after and a job to do and so many life stresses, how can you live in the hopeful, optimistic, grateful, make each day count place?
Mhm.
I think that can so easily just start to get squashed down again. I know. Yeah, I feel like I know I've certainly experienced having that kind of feeling, and then it does soon start to get a bit quieter again.
And I think there I go to compassion, and that there's, you know, kind of like different phases of life, and you'll be able to cope with different things at different times, and, you know, have more energy at different times. And so, yeah, I think it's important not to slip into being too self-critical about, oh, I'm wasting time. But I think there is, even with, you know, all of the life stresses and things, I think it is really important to find some way to hold on to what is it that makes life meaningful for you, and find some way to weave that through your days in a small way.
This is where people can get stuck in that existential rumination about what is the meaning of life, like that universal question, and whether or not people believe that there is one universal truth about meaning.
Mhm.
And then whether that comes from some sort of religion, spirituality, or other sort of doctrine for people, or whether people believe there is no universal meaning to life. Life is the individual meaning that you make in your own life.
Yeah.
And I know for a long time I got stuck in this one universal truth. And it actually didn't come from a religious or a spiritual place. I mean, I've described myself as an atheist since I was a teenager. So it's never been about that, but it's just always been about that big life question and just really struggling to know what the point is and wanting there to be a point, and then getting really fixated on there must be a point.
Yeah.
And yeah, and struggling with that quite a lot.
I guess that ties with the suffering, doesn't it? You know, that if
Yeah.
there is suffering is there a point to it? Is there an end to it? How do you manage that? I'm just thinking about, is it Viktor Frankl who
Hmm.
says,
Yeah, in his book Man's Search for Meaning.
yeah, he says, those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how, which I think is particularly poignant when you know that he survived the Holocaust,
Yes,
and just how horrendous that suffering must have been.
that is a great book.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a long time ago I read that now, but it was a good book.
Yeah, really good.
So how have you found your search for the why? Tell me, what has been your meaning-making journey?
So I had a semi-religious upbringing. I think that's normal for a lot of people my age in Britain. So I was christened, I went to Sunday school, don't really remember it. Didn't go to a Church of England school, but we did sing religious hymns and religion was kind of woven in. We did learn about other religions as well. But I've never really been a religious person. I had a teenage kind of flirtation with paganism.
Mm.
And I think I describe myself as a spiritual person. So I don't imagine that there's like a God in the sky and that we just survive this to get to heaven. So there's never really been any strong religious. But I think even though I've had that kind of spiritual thread, which I think is mainly a sense that we're all connected somehow, maybe that there is some kind of higher consciousness. I don't know. It sounds a bit more new agey than the way that I experience it. But I don't think any of that has been a comfort when I've been in times of what's the point. And like I said before, I have spent a lot of time in what's the point throughout my life. The point at which it changed for me is where I read something about like you can decide for yourself that there might be a comfort if there was definitely a point to life and we all knew what it was, but also it could be really uncomfortable if it doesn't fit for you.
Mhm.
And that actually there is some freedom while it can be overwhelming, that sense of there's no point. Yeah, I think it's the tone, isn't it? You could say it in like, well, there's no point to all of this, or there's no specific point, so we can make any point we like, and there's freedom to choose in that. And I found that freeing and comforting, and it wasn't so straightforward because then I felt like I needed to go away and ask other people what was it that made their lives meaningful and, what did they live for? And actually, that was a really interesting thing to do. So I posted in a couple of Facebook groups, I think. And the things that people replied with were just so beautiful and lovely, but just day-to-day things. So things like sunsets, poetry, dancing, cuddles, like just this whole, like a warm cup of tea, a walk with my dog, like all those different things that just make life, I say bearable then, but it's not bearable. It's more than that. I think maybe it is joyful.
Mhm.
And then another thing that I read a bit after that was about the universe is just trying to express itself. Like every single person is a once in a, not even lifetime, but like once in the universe's existence. Like your existence will never happen anywhere else in time or space. This is it. And so it just felt like there was something really important and special about how can I be as authentic as possible to allow the universe to express itself through me.
Yeah.
Yeah, really like that.
I had two responses to that. One part was, that sounds really lovely. And the other part was, but what if there are a bunch of coexisting parallel universes and actually there are multiples of us doing it multiple times?
Well, yeah, and I guess even if there is, like, would it be exactly the same? So I suppose I think about multiple universes as maybe I exist in another universe, but am I living the exact same life? Probably not.
Hmm.
So in that universe, my responsibility to the universe is to express that
Hmm.
authenticity.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just like that. I do sometimes feel like living without religion is like you lose something.
Hmm.
I think there are different aspects to that. I think there's a community aspect to it that I often feel like, how do we recreate the community of church or, wherever. But yeah, I think meaning is another one.
Yes, definitely. I think there is also a lot that's lost that you can then get through religion. I think it's then, yeah, finding other ways within which to have and create that for yourself. If you don't have this comfort of life after death or imagining your loved ones in heaven, those kinds of things, then it's what do you fill that with. There's a lot of like hope, I kind of want to say, like in religion.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's what do you replace that with? But I know for me, it was interesting listening to you talk about how you found comfort in, I can create my own meaning, and it can be sunsets and walks with the dogs and the idea like this is it. But I know that wasn't enough for me. So when I was trying to do that for myself, it just didn't really land. It didn't still stop the thought spirals around, but what is the point really? And what really is the meaning? And is the meaning of life really sunsets? Like, if you've gone through like difficult things in life, if you've experienced trauma, if you're living with chronic illnesses, it still feels like there's got to be more to this. And I used to have this strong sense of, this used to come up quite a bit in my therapy. I used to say, I don't know what it is I'm supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
Okay, it felt like that there's something I'm supposed to be doing that I'm not doing. And I couldn't name what that was or where that was come from, because I don't believe that there's any grand plan that's been designed for me or anything like that. But it was just this strong sense of, I just used to say, I don't get it. I don't get what I'm supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
And yeah, it still felt like that I didn't quite yet have a solid basis on which to work from that didn't stop me going round and round in these existential loops, which I can say I have now got there and I can say how. But it took me a long time because those other things, like you mentioned, that can help other people it still just didn't help me.
Yeah. So how did you get there?
Well, I cycled through a few philosophical takes on life and did a bit of reading around them. And that helped give me a bit more knowledge. But to be honest, it was ultimately one sentence that my therapist said that kind of changed everything. But I thought I might just run through, for those who might not know, what some of the most popular kind of philosophical views on life can be.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, so some of the popular ones, well, there's absurdism, which basically posits that life is meaningless and beautiful, and the only logical response is to embrace both. So that is essentially about just embracing the absolute absurdity that life is and that it doesn't make sense, but it can still be beautiful without meaning. Stoicism focuses on what you can control, so your thoughts, your actions, behavior, and let go of what you can't. So that's very much just a focus on letting go of anything that's not in your control and only focusing on the things that you can control. And just to say, this is like a very brief outline of some pretty big, complex philosophical ideas. So go away and research them if you want to. Nihilism, which is where a lot of us that think this way can end up, which is basically nothing matters, so why bother? And if we stay here for too long, this can lead to despair and depression. I think it's a hard place to stay, nihilism. I think you can dip into it and then move, but I don't know how happy or settled you can feel in life if you totally just sit with nothing matters, so why bother? And then existentialism, which is something that I take quite a lot from, is that life doesn't come preloaded with meaning. And this is like you were saying that you found helpful, Alice. You can create it yourself through choices, love, and responsibility. So that is ultimately about creating your own meaning in life. And even though that didn't fully fit the picture for me, it definitely helped. And as you said, it helped for you. This isn't really a philosophical approach, but I wrote it down to remind myself to speak about, because one thing that I've always kind of followed is what Socrates said in terms of know thyself. And I do think understanding yourself is the starting point for understanding life. So there has been, of course, so much that I've done around that self exploration. But another thing that gives me a lot of comfort, again, this isn't, well, you could argue actually that it is a life philosophy, actually, is humanism. And I've read quite a lot about humanism as a concept. And that brings a lot of comfort for me as well. And humanism essentially centers compassion and curiosity and is a non religious philosophy, believing that we create our own sense of purpose by caring for each other and for the planet, and that a good life is one that is thoughtful, ethical, and focused on living in the present. I also find meaning in the planet itself. So some people, I think, take meaning from looking at life as if it has been designed by a creator, Whereas I personally find the magic in just life and it exists itself. Like you said, the fact that we exist is such, yeah, I wouldn't even like to know the statistical probability of the fact that we exist. But I know it's pretty small, although I am sure that there is life out there in the vastness of the universe. But either way, it is insane that we exist at all. And so I think that in and of itself is crazy magical, and connecting with life and the delicate balance of the ecosystems, and the fact that we've ended up with a moon that without the moon helping with our tides and climates and things, that the earth would just basically collapse, is just incredible. And so all of that to me just in and of itself feels miraculous without needing any kind of creator explanation. But taking it back to the pits of deep existential despair that my therapist helped get me out of. So I have seen a therapist whose modality is existential and philosophy. Before being a therapist, had a philosophy degree. So I was really able to explore some of this stuff in those sessions, and I've brought so much of that into my own work. Now, she put it in such a blunt way, but essentially the message was, if we accept that life has no meaning and no purpose and is totally absurd, chaotic, and random, you are ultimately left with two choices. You can either decide to check out of life, or you just carry on anyway, knowing that. And so I think she point blank asked me, like, are you going to check out of life? And I was like, no. It's like, well, you just carry on then. And I was like, yeah, it's literally that simple. I can accept that what's the point? I can debate what's the point, till the cows come home, as the saying goes. But I'm choosing to continue regardless anyway. And just putting it that bluntly and straightforward to me was really helpful.
I think sometimes that bluntness is needed. It's important. I think especially when you're, if you're really kind of looping and stuck in a thought, that sometimes it just needs something to cut through. So yeah, I think it is important and really helpful that your therapist did that for you.
Yeah. Just to say, what she actually said was, are you going to kill yourself? Like, well, you can either kill yourself or you can carry on. And that was like fine for me to hear. But I thought, I'm not sure I had to say if I could like put it like that on the podcast.
But I guess it's the truth of the matter, isn't it? I guess that is the reality of it.
Yeah, I do think sometimes you do just need something putting bluntly, because it made it really straightforward. Because anytime now I start to go into any kind of that sort of questioning for myself, I just go, stop. Are you going to check out? No. Well, you just carry on then. And it helps me to not get into those kinds of thought spirals that I'd get into all the time. And as a result of that, I'm now more able to lean into what you have lent into about just carrying on with life, as crazy and as how much it doesn't make sense, and find meaning in whatever way I can.
Yeah, I'm curious as we're talking, and I'm kind of listening to how you're responding to what I'm saying. And the feeling that I've got is that I've not quite articulated quite how it is for me, because I'm not sat in a space of it doesn't make sense anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think the sense and the point is very much centered for me around how can we do as much good as possible in the time that we have? Like, how can we contribute positively to humanity?
Mm-hmm.
I suppose where it gets a bit twisty again is like, how did we end up here? And, so going back to when my dad died, the first thing I did, so I drove home, it was a couple of hours drive home from the hospital, like middle of the night as well. And the first thing I did was I got in bed and I said to my husband, like, but where has he gone? Like, where is he gone? And I was like, well, how did the universe start? I was like, if I can figure out where we came from, then maybe I can figure out where he's gone. And really got into this thing of like, but where did it start? And it really like mangles my brain to think about, Googled this before we started, about like energy can't be created or destroyed. Like if energy can't be created, like where did any of this come from?
Yes.
Like, and I know it's all like, but you can't just say like the Big Bang, because like, well, but what do you mean? Like how, like there had to be something for there to be any kind of reaction, or like, or the universe is expanding, but like expanding into what? That means
into what?
space. Like it really messes with my head.
Yeah. just to jump in there, even though I don't describe myself as spiritual at all, if I was ever to believe in any sort of afterlife, it's related to that. It's the idea of where does our energy then go?
Yeah.
And could there be something related to some sort of afterlife in relation to like our energy after we're not here anymore?
Yeah. Yeah. And there will, of course, be people that, are very blunt about that and just see our bodies as essentially a highly complicated computer, and that when you die, like that's it, your computer, your brain just turns off and that's it, you just cease to exist. But I just can't get my head around that. And from the universe perspective and like where any of this came from, I do find that just impossible to comprehend. And I kind of like, in some ways, I've seen some scientists say that like the more we study the universe, the more it seems like we're in a simulation. Like there's almost some comfort for me in like maybe this is a part of something bigger. But even that, I'm like, oh, but what's the purpose of that? Like, are we a science experiment? Is there like, are we a computer game? Are we Sims?
Yeah. If so, I wish the one controlling me would do that money cheat.
Yeah. But then I start to feel guilty about all the times that I've played Sims and messed around with people's lives, not realizing that they were actually really anything. I try not to spend too much time dwelling on those kinds of things because, they do, it can become overwhelming and frightening for me. But yeah, I think coming back to the point of life for me, it is very much about, I think it's love is the way that I would sum it up, is how do we love ourselves and each other and the world, and just contribute to the betterment of everything around us as much as we can, like leave it a better place than you found it. I think that's probably my philosophy then, is how do you leave the world a better place than you've found it?
You sound quite aligned with humanism as a concept.
Yeah, and I do follow, is it the Humanism Association or something? I do follow them, and it is that, but there is also a thread of spirituality through it, which again is hard to define. And I think there's also a nature aspect to it, where you said about, I can't remember how you worded it now, but like finding meaning in the world itself. I think as I get older, there's also that to it.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah. I just find that hard. The idea that we could try to leave the world a better place than we found it. And in an instant, someone sat in a room somewhere could press a button and destroy everything in one go. And those are the things that baffle me. I can't get my head around how people think you can own a piece of the earth. Like the earth is earth. It's not for sale. How can people decide that they own a piece of it? Who started out owning it all to hand it out? And I don't get why we're all split up into separate countries and we operate on a country by country basis and are pitted against one another and want to keep one country down so that we can be higher. And gosh, in the past, all like the wars and battles and death for empire creation and colonization of different countries and its people. And I don't get why we're not just operating as one planet, like for all, like just abolish all countries and just operate as one lot of people. And I don't think anybody should own land. It's surely either we own the whole planet or we own none of the planet. Do you know what I mean? Like it belongs to all of us. And that includes all animals and creatures whose habitats we destroy with our concrete and our buildings and roads and things like that. So I think sometimes when I come back to, I just don't get it. It's that the way in which the world has ended up being ran and how it looks like now is just so far removed from how I would picture it ideally going in my mind.
Yeah. It's not enough frolicking.
There is not enough frolicking. Damn it, that's the meaning of life. We found it.
It's frolicking.
It's frolicking.
That's what I was trying to say. Sunsets and poetry and frolicking.
Oh, you said that right at the start. We could have just cut the episode off there.
Oh dear.
How do you get your head around nature? Because I can tell. Don't know what facial expression it was that you pulled there.
Just the biggest question of all time. How do you get your head around nature?
Sorry, there is a second part to that question. Oh, it was just the way you almost like rolled your eyes or something. I was like, what? What is with the question?
It was whoa.
Instant panic and overwhelm.
Yeah, it wasn't an eye roll.
Alice, just surmise nature. No, so for example, I just said about the way in which humans have ended up constructing and running the planet and the way in which, yeah, it all runs. If I then take it back to nature and trying to appreciate nature, I then start to butt up against, oh, but nature feels cruel. And then it comes back to, oh, well, why has nature ended up being cruel? I mean, I want to say designed to be cruel. That brings it back to a designer or a creator. But yeah, it almost feels like, again, could that not have been done in a different way where it didn't have to be cruel? Because it's so hard to live between. So watching a nature documentary and the polar bear is trying to get the seals, and you're like, oh my God, please don't get the seal, please don't get the seal. And the seal escapes, and you're like, oh my God, thank God, a happy ending. And then the polar bear goes back to its den and is like, sorry, little cubs, I have no food for you. And then they do a little whine because they're hungry. And then you're like, oh no, and now they're starving because they didn't get their food. So it's like in that one moment, it's like, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel because I want the seal to escape and not be killed. And I want the polar bear cubs' tummies to be full. And that's another thing that I find so hard to sit with and understand in terms of like, why does nature have to work that way?
Yeah, it is difficult, isn't it? As you were saying that, my mind had kind of gone to like, why do bad things happen? And, so like when people say like, oh, everything happens for a reason, like I do on a very logistical level think everything happens for a reason, but not like, oh, there's some grand plan and this is why it's happened. But like, I'm struggling to think of a specific example. But I suppose my brain goes to is like there might be a scientific explanation for what went wrong here, and this was the end result of it. Does that make sense? So Michael Rosen talks about suffering a lot. So his son died when I think he was 21, and he had meningitis. So when I would think about like everything happens for a reason, the way that I would answer that is the reason that Eddie died is because he caught meningitis and it multiplied in his body and it killed him. Like that was the reason. Not like why did he die, like, why did this have to happen kind of thing.
Oh, okay, yeah. Because I feel like when most people say everything happens for a reason, they're talking more spiritually, like there's some sort of plan and it was for a purpose. Whereas, yeah, I've always rejected that and not believed everything that happens for a reason. But because I think there's like a scientific explanation or it's down to the randomness, absurdity, odds, and statistics of life.
Yeah, I think that's where I really do pull away from religion or anything like that. I don't, there's like how could God allow this to happen? Like there's so much intense suffering that happens that it is unforgivable to think that there's somebody that would allow that to happen.
Yeah.
And I know that growth can come out of suffering, but still, I just don't buy it. I just don't buy that.
No, the end doesn't justify the means there. What about karma? Because some people take comfort in karma, and I know lots of people have said, I've heard that lots of times, with certain situations I've been in the past of, oh, well, they'll get what's coming to them. And I'm like, I don't think they will.
Yeah, so when I separated from my first husband, lots of people said that to me. He'll get what's coming to him, and he didn't. And it took a few years, and at some point I was like, I just need to give up on this idea. Like it isn't helping me. I think it kind of categorize it similar to revenge. And I've got a different way of thinking about karma now, but I'm struggling to articulate what it is on the spot. How do I think about karma now? I definitely don't think about karma as revenge. I perhaps think about karma more as what you put out into the world, you get back. Like if you're a friendly person, you're probably going to have more friends. If you're a generous person, maybe people will be generous back to you. I know it's not always as simple and straightforward as that. But I suppose that's how I think about karma now. Definitely not as revenge.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've kind of redefined what karma kind of means to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm the same in terms of not believing in karma as a concept, in terms of there's a balance sheet being kept somewhere. If anything, that I believe people who tend to do the unethical, unhonorable thing tend to, I think life can tend to be easier for them actually.
Mhm,
I think they're more likely to have easier things. Obviously, not that's not always the case.
mhm,
I think it's hard to be the ethical, honorable, respectful, compassionate kind of person that tries to do the right thing and follow the rules and things like that to the letter. I do think that sometimes means that you can miss out on certain things other people who are willing to do the dodgy deal will, yeah, maybe benefit from.
I've just remembered what karma was now, and actually, I've remembered it because Taylor Swift sings about it in her song called
Okay.
Karma.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's called. It eventually came down to recognize that we have to live with ourselves, and that if you hurt somebody, that the karma is your guilt. And I think even in the case that, if we take like somebody that would meet the clinical definition for narcissistic personality disorder, you might think like, oh, they don't feel guilty, they're not going to care. But I don't believe that. I think that actually it is in their psyche, and actually that is what drives the grandiose behavior, because they feel so bad about themselves that they have to perform this grandiose personality, that actually, yeah, that if you don't treat people very well, your karma is that you have to live with that. Like
Mm.
that's who you are. That's what you did. Yeah, that's how I think about karma. So maybe it is a bit revengey, but not really. It's not inflicting. It's not some force that inflicts on you or on anybody else. It,
Yeah.
it's it's consequence.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's where there's a difference between revenge and justice.
Mm.
Oh, yeah. Consequences, the consequences of your behavior.
Yeah, yeah. But so even where there is no justice, because that has also been a difficult concept. I've been through something and realized that actually, you think the courts are there to help you. They're not a lot of the time. That, yeah, so even where there's no legal justice,
Mm.
that, in the dark of night when these people are on their own, they probably don't like themselves very much. And that brings me some comfort that I'm not like that. That, yes, I have, have in the past hurt people and have made the wrong decision and things like that. But that's not who I am as a person.
Hmm.
So I can rest easy in myself that is my karma.
Not that's your version of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say for me in relation to that, yeah, it's interesting listening to you talk. I think differently to you. I don't think, even if deep down they do not like themselves, I think they can't access that.
Okay.
I think it will be a lot of avoidance and excuse making and defensiveness to where they don't probably convince themselves that they've not even done anything wrong. I don't think, I mean, I'm saying monsters here. I'm being a little bit, what's the word? I'm inflating this a little bit, but I don't think monsters think they're monsters, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think that's true. I suppose I think about it in terms of splitting.
Yeah.
That most of the time what's going to be in their conscious mind is, I'm fine, the other person's the problem, that is how it's going to be. But it is there in their psyche. It is,
Mm.
and it will cause them problems.
Yes. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
and I'm sure they will then, I'm sure there are lots of them that will then go on to use that discomfort to inflict further pain. I'm not saying that everybody will have some kind of reckoning and change how they think.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah.
I just think there's a difference between convincing yourself that you're a good person and the narcissistic way of doing that, in that inflated sense of self-importance, and genuinely being comfortable with who you are as a person.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I do feel quite, yeah, it is something that I feel quite strongly about, actually. I think it's something about narcissism that's massively understood, that actually
Yeah.
they are in pain. They are in deep pain, and there will be it will push through at points.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, we could have a whole episode on narcissism, psychopathy,
Yeah. Mhm.
all of that. And we're not really going to have time to fully explore it, but it also makes me think of purpose, meaning, and our understanding of the world in terms of like good versus bad, good versus evil. That's a tale as old as time, isn't it? that informs so much of our storytelling even. And the truth is of that there's no real such thing as good people and bad people. Humans are such complex creatures, but it's just so easy to put people in these boxes, isn't it, of them there being a good person and there being a bad person. But that would certainly be a good thing. Yeah, a good thing to discuss at some point. Yeah, so how does having all of this awareness, and we've spoken about so many different sides to getting philosophical and yeah, struggling with these existential questions, but how has that messed with daily life for you?
Yeah, so I think it's very different now. I think that it has led to extended periods of depression for me
Mm,
that has then struggled to get out of bed at points, and I think felt resentful about daily tasks. It doesn't feel way so much now. I think that maybe there's something about, and it sounds a bit counterintuitive, but something about zooming out a little bit. It's recognizing that I'm so in my head and that actually I need to pull back, and it's about coming out of my own head and pulling back and being able to see my whole family and everything that needs doing for my family. And so again, I think that comes back to how can I contribute something positive, and that some of that is just the boring day-to-day tasks that need to happen to keep everybody healthy and well.
yeah.
How about for you?
Yeah, similar. I think thinking this way has had a big impact on my mental health and well-being. It's certainly led to quite a lot of suffering. It's also, though, led to, I kind of want to say, like fun. Like, I also can get a lot of enjoyment around some of these questions as well. It's not all deep and crisisy. Sometimes I love listening to podcasts or reading articles about the nature of reality and is this really real? Could we be in a simulation or other different type of reality? That's a little bit like what popped up in what ChatGPT said for me about the space in between atoms. Like, well, what is in between there then? I don't understand. What is that? So some of that I just find really interesting. I have a curious mind and I like using it. So it leads and has led to just lots of good trained thoughts and things like that. And yeah, and also it has been really difficult and still can be really difficult at times. I still can't quite grasp that I have so many ideas of things that I would like to be able to do with my life and learn about and do. And the idea that that's impossible in my very short and limited existence, I just refuse to accept it. It's like,
Yeah.
no, that's not fair. Why can't I have all of these 50 different careers and live in all these different countries? Yeah, so I struggle a lot with that. But it has helped just to really pin down what my own life philosophy is rather than pinging around all the time, wondering what the meaning is. I have found it quite helpful to actually, when I say study this, like I don't mean like I have read books by Immanuel Kant or Kierkegaard or anything. And I'm only saying the names really to show off because I only know a small amount, like from little bits that I've read. Also, if anyone's seen The Good Place on Netflix, oh, talk about a good show for like philosophical debate and existential thought. I freaking love that show. Yeah, you like it as well.
Yeah.
So, but learning a little bit about some of these things, I have found helpful getting to grips with the very basics of as to what some of those philosophical schools of thought are, like we read earlier, like around existentialism and things like that, and aligning with humanism. And these aren't things that I've dove deep into and can tell you all about. I mean, there's literally a book on my shelf there actually about humanism. I've not read it. It looks pretty where it is. It's called The Little Book of Humanism. It's that green one. Sorry, for people on the video podcast or no.
It was confusing because you were looking I couldn't see there was a book on that, but there's books all the other side, and I'm like, is there a weird mirror thing going on here?
Oh yeah, no, it's on the wheel thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've read maybe like a quarter, like literally, that's just it. So what I'm trying to say is you don't have to do much, but I found actually pinning down what my philosophical beliefs are and just making it actually quite simple for me helped a lot. And I just recognize and accept I will always be asking why. I just will. Get used to it, people. Um yeah, I just always will. And I like that. It's hard at times, but I like that as well. And so there's a lot in here. And in fact, if anybody like heavily is relating to this episode, there is, of course, existential therapists that you could go and see, but also ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, can also be really helpful for things like this as well. So yeah, there's a lot on just about accepting and trying to create my own smaller little bits of meaning each day. And just as a reminder to myself, sometimes if my problems in life are feeling quite big and overwhelming, is one of my favorite photographs in space is known as the pale blue dot. And it is essentially a photo of space. There's a teeny tiny dot and it's our planet from such a great distance. Sometimes seeing the planet from such that great distance, it helps me to see it like that, actually, from putting things into perspective. Not in a way where I'm saying it doesn't matter, but it really does help to put things in perspectives for me. So sometimes I come back to that photograph.
See, I think that helps a lot of people, but for me, it's the opposite. For me, that stirs up, like, I think for me, it's based around, I'm making a fuss about nothing. So that doesn't work for me, but I know it does bring comfort to a lot of people. But yeah, I hope to find something similar for me. Maybe there is something, but yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, it's when things happen that feel like they are world ending. And they might be really important and it's okay to have big feelings about it, but it just helps me to realize, okay, it's not world ending and this will pass.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a version of that for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing that helps me the most is even when I say to myself, the world genuinely makes no sense, it is absolutely insane, and I don't get the point to any of it, but I'm going to choose to live anyway and keep going.
I like the way that even though we have lots of similarities, that there are really significant differences for us. And I feel like that just highlights the importance of, like you say, finding your own way and finding what works for you.
Yes. So if you've ever found yourself staring into the night sky, wondering what the point of all of this is, maybe the point isn't to find one. Maybe it's to live anyway.
Maybe we don't need certainty to live meaningfully, just honesty, curiosity, and each other.
So go ahead, fold the laundry, question the universe, and make tea for no particular reason. It's all part of the same absurd dance. Next time, we'll be diving into Too Miserable to Be Merry, where we'll talk about the other side of Christmas, tricky family dynamics, grief, and how to survive the season when everyone else seems joyful and you're just not.
But for now, we'll leave you with this question. If you stop searching for life's big meaning, what small things might start to feel meaningful again?
That's all from us today. If this episode made you feel a bit less alone, the best way to help us reach more people is to subscribe, rate the podcast, and follow Too Much Apparently on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
Those simple clicks help other sensitive humans find us when they need it most. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon.